Alright, welcome to another episode of Middleware Friday, episode 94, March 22nd, 2019, looping in Azure Logic Apps. So in this episode, I like to emphasize or get one of our tips from serverless nodes and give that a little bit more of attention. So that will be a looping in this case. So I'll talk about that. And I'll also have some community content, so I'll just emphasize or point out to our YouTube channel where you can find all our episodes, and also will talk a bit about Integrate 2019. So, community content. So, what I'm going to talk about is looping, and this is one of the tips you can find in the service notes. So, this is an initiative done by myself, Eldert, and Ken Weir, Sean Feldman. So we're working on tips. So we already pushed out a few when you watch this episode, logic apps and functions. So that includes also something around looping. And we're still working on some of the other tips around Service Bus, Event Hub, and Event Grid. So we'll talk about more of these serverless type of capability in Azure. So let's talk about looping. So there are two ways of doing looping in Logic Apps. So looping in general is just a way of controlling the behavior in a Logic app. So you can loop using either a for each or you can use a do until. So the for each, you can iterate, let's say, through an array of items. You have to think about parallelism as well. Do you want to go sequentially? So you want to loop through each of the items, or you want to do it in parallel, which you can do with concurrency. And what you have to think about too, with for each, but also with do until, so I'll point it out in both, is costs. So while you're looping through an array of items, let's say there's multiple items, thousands and thousands of items you have to iterate through, do some processing, you might think about an alternative like functions. There's also a limitation if you look at for each, if you go through an array of items. So the limit's on 100,000. You can have process in an array. So that's kind of the limit. And the same with for each with regards to concurrency. You can run in parallel. So 20 is the kind of the default limit, but you can change between 1 and 50. So the highest number is the number of items you can run in parallel with your looping. Then you have to do until. So that's another way of controlling the behavior in your Logic app, but then differently. So what you have to do is initialize a variable, for instance, and then loop through or do times of looping until you reach a certain limit, as displayed here. So again, you have to think about iteration on one end. What you're going to do within that iteration, and cost as well. That's something I pointed out also with the for each. And the other thing you have to think about with regards to do until is prevent an endless loop. So I've put a count in here as well. So for instance, the default is 60, but you can increase it or lower it, and timeout. So this is kind of built in a bit. So otherwise you will keep running your actions and again run into some costs. So what I like to do is I'll have a demo around the for each, but also do until. So what I'll do with the for each, I'll send an array of orders to a Logic app. It will go through them and send each item in the array as a single order to a service bus queue. So here's Postman. So what I'll do is that I have a HTTP trigger Logic app, and what I'll do is I'll send this batch of orders towards that endpoint. I'll invoke it, and it will be accepted by the Logic app. So just may quickly go to the overview. As you can see, this is the run. I've done it a couple of times already. It will get that match, and then it will just go through them to send it to the service bus each time, the single message. I think that's pretty obvious what happens. It's base 64 encoded here as content, but it's just one of the orders. So I can make this, I can visualize this. So just get message, probably be a few more now, about 8. I'm using here the Serverless 360 tool, which is very helpful if you want to look into your queue, if there's still active messages in there, or you want to monitor your dead letter queue, etc. So it's a very nifty tool to use. And here you can see one of the other messages as well. And what I've done is, I added a custom property as well, so that's daytime, so that's added as well. So if I go back, you can see that that's being as an extra message property added to the Logic app, to the message being sent out from the Logic app. So let me just quickly go to the designer. And like I pointed out, you can run this in parallel. So if you want to, you go to settings, and here you can set this concurrency control. And as you can see, limit is on 20. You can kind of go to 1 or 50 or whatever you're required to do. So that's how you can control the concurrency, by going to the action and then just use settings. The other one I like to point out is an example of do until. So if a reoccurrence, I would say, okay, hey, I'm going to run a scheduled task or job every day, for instance. So you want to maybe do a few actions daily, like cleaning logs, maybe archive a few things by copying from storage account to an archiving tier. So you go from a hot to an archiving. You can think all kinds of jobs you might want to do during a day, and maybe there's a few of them. So that it could be that there's 10 jobs you want to do. So you initialize a variable, set it to 1, and then you just keep adding towards it when you run, as you can see here. So there's a limit being set, the interval is 1. This is just a run I just created. If I go to the designer, you can easily see, okay, I got the recurrence, I got the initialize of the variable, and then there's nothing in there, but I could have added an action right here or a step, do some processing, and then increase the variable and do another step, depending on if I want to do multiple steps. Just a simple do until. Doing one task, or maybe do something one. It depends on the logic you're going to put in your until. Okay, so 2 ways of looping for each and do until. I think it's pretty clear how you could apply that type of behavior inside a Logic app. Now, I've talked about this in previous episodes as well. So we have a YouTube channel where you can ultimately also find this episode, but also the previous episodes from the past, and some other biztalk 360 content as well. So it's going to be published on the biztalk 360 platform first, and then it's going to be pushed out to the YouTube channel. Another thing I'd like to make you aware of as well, while we talk about this, is Integrate 219. So you've probably been aware of this event. It's a yearly event. It's been done for years now. It started out to be the biztalk days, and then it evolved into Integrate. I've been on this journey for a couple of years as well, with a fellow presenter of these Middle of Fridays, Kent. So we've been doing this for a while, and this year again there will be 2 integrates. So there's going to be one in London, 3rd to 5th of June, and there's going to be one in the US. So you can either, if you live in Europe, you can go to that one, or if you're in the US, you particularly could say, okay, at the end of June I'm going to the Microsoft campus and attend the integrate. Yeah, so it's going to be same content but in both locations. So there's still tickets available, so please do grab one of those, and I'm going to be there as well, so it's going to be really great to catch up there if you're coming to one of these events. Okay, so I'd like to thank you for watching again. So for this episode around looping in Logic Apps, one of the tips on serverless nodes. I'd like to thank biztalk 360 for being a great host and also helping us out to get that content out around these tips. And I'm going to leave you with the music credits.